Welcome to the annual UPDES training. My name is Dawn Barbie. I'm in the Public Utilities Department. Let's get started. So today we are talking about water quality and pollution. So this leads us to talking about stormwater. The question is, what is stormwater? It's rain, sleet, hail, and snow, essentially precipitation. Waterways had become so polluted by industrial waste, non-point source pollution, and a myriad of other pollutions, something had to be done to save our waterways. In 1972, the Clean Water Act was implemented to address water pollution and set standards for water quality. In 1987, the Water Quality Act was implemented, and this is how we were going to keep the water clean. The EPA established the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System for all states to fall under, but Utah has its own regulatory program. We have the Utah Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. Essentially, the state issues a permit under the EPA to the city. Since all water is owned by the state, we need a permit to discharge or allow stormwater into our drainage system and then to the nearest waterway. We fall under the Jordan Valley Permit Program, and the Utah Pollutant Discharge Elimination System is essentially short for what mechanisms do we set to keep or minimize pollution going into our storm drains and ultimately the nearest river, lake, or stream. We are legally bound by the state and the EPA to the guidelines established to help protect our waterways. So ultimately, we're talking about stormwater and water quality, but in one context. So we'll talk about the water cycle. Obviously, it rains, storms, goes into soils, rivers, up through vegetation, and back into the cloud system, and then that cycle continues and continues. The issue is that cycle has actually been broken in some places. So with impervious surfaces, water is not able to penetrate back into the ground through these materials. So you've got parking lots and driveways, sidewalks, development. All of these things don't allow the water to go back into the ground, so it ends up running over all these surfaces and collecting anything on that surface and takes it directly into the storm drain system. Stormwater is not treated, and since it's not treated, whatever is on that hard impervious surface ends up in the storm drain system and directly into nearby rivers, lakes, and streams. So what does this mean? Anything on those sidewalks and streets go directly into the Jordan River, for this example, and then onto the Great Salt Lake. So there's a direct connection from that inlet to that water body. So the question is, what's in the water? And these are just some of the pollutants that we're talking about. Pet waste, lawn clippings, oil from vehicles, fertilizers, detergents, trash, and other organics like leaves and branches. So all of these individually and collectively are problematic. Put all those together and it equals poor water quality. So what can we do at home? You've got lawn clippings, leaves, dirt, these things are organic, yes, but they still negatively impact water quality. So when you have all that going into the system, number one, it can cause flooding because it can clog up the system, as well as once it actually impacts the water, it can deplete the water of oxygen, and that's, of course, problematic for wildlife. Pesticides and fertilizers, they can be used safely. Just limit their use and make sure they stay on the grass only. Washing your car. Car washes are a great alternative. They are ruled and regulated and recapture water. But if you want to do this at home, that's fine. You just need to make sure that everything stays on your property, preferably your lawn. Even if you're using biodegradable soaps, just because it's biodegradable doesn't mean it will biodegrade before it actually negatively impacts wildlife and the environment. household hazardous waste. So we are actually in the process, the county is building a new facility coming to the city, and we will have great access to dispose of oils, paints, chemicals properly. We want to make sure that those are disposed of correctly so that they don't end up in the landfill and polluting water and soil. Dog waste is a big contributor to E. coli in waterways that negatively impact human health and water quality. Power washing is a great tool to clean, obviously, but we, again, want to make sure that you recapture that water. There is an additional video that is linked to this training, and it gives you information on how to properly use and be mindful of using a power washing system. And then obviously this is not a full or exhaustive list, but these are some of the big contributors. So how do we address pollution in the city? We keep everything as orderly and clean as possible to minimize pollutants that will make their way into the water bodies. We have BMPs, or best management practices, which is a system with guidelines in place so that every situation is handled the exact same and properly. On the top left, you'll see it's a street sweeper, which serves two functions. The first is to keep the city clean and looking nice, and the second keeps debris out of our storm drain system. On the top right is a Vector truck. These keep storm drains and boxes clean and clear. And you'll see on the bottom right that spills do happen, but we have proper protocol in place for the cleanup, and once everything's addressed, taken care of, we can move forward. Public Utilities runs the program here at the city. This is our organizational chart for all city employees who are part of our program. Everyone in the red boxes have a direct role in our program. So we have GIS for mapping and asset management, Public Works, Public Utilities, Parks and Rec. We have high priority facilities. We have some facilities that have a greater chance of discharging pollutants, so those are met quarterly and inspected frequently. We work with community development for permits, ordinances. We have a plan review partnership and working together to ensure compliance. Police and fire assist with emergency responses, such as illicit discharges, accidents, and those things, and to ensure that we are addressing any potential problem. So one of the ways that we try to implement water quality in new development or redevelopment is low impact development. Essentially, you'll see on the picture on the left that water is hitting that parking lot and is being directed into this swell, and the water will actually drive back into the water. And you can see within one day all the water is gone because it's gone back into the soil, and it's kept it from actually going and polluting the river through our drainage system. So for construction sites, we have some rules and regulations about they need to keep all of their materials and property clean, free of problems, secondary containment, that sort of thing. You'll see that on the bottom right there was a rain event, and the trucks coming in and out were tracking mud. This is a public safety problem, as well as we don't want all of that going into our storm drain system. So this needs to be addressed. If you see this, let us know. I wanted to provide an example of a wattle. On the bottom left, you'll see that it's, again, protecting that storm inlet from bigger objects, like leaves and branches and litter, debris, that sort of thing. So now I'll go into a couple of examples of illicit discharges, things that are problematic. This example was there was an RV show in the city, and there were 5 different teams power washing hundreds of RVs in the parking lot. This was called in by a Sandy City employee. We were able to send someone to have them stop, put up wattles and berms, and keep any of the water and soap out of the system. They were to allow it to dry, then clean up any of the debris, sweeping it and put it in the garbage. So you'll see again, no soap is allowed because it will negatively impact water quality and wildlife. So this next example is dirt piles. We'll start to see a lot of these now that it's spring and summer's coming, that landscape companies will drop these piles off. They really should be on a tarp in the driveway, but often they're put in the street. If it's going to be cleaned up within 24 to 48 hours and there's no planned precipitation, that we can accept that. But if they're there longer or we anticipate any kind of storm event, they will need to be cleaned up immediately. We had some public utilities employees that saw this dirt pile and called me, because you can see there's a lot of dirt and mud going down and impacting that storm drain. On the far right, you'll see where our employees were able to put in some sandbags to protect that inlet. So again, even though it is organic, it still is problematic. So this example, this RV caught fire and was completely destroyed. As you can see, the debris and fire flow made it to the storm drain. Unfortunately, the property owner is ultimately responsible for the property, and they were required to clean out the boxes and the pipes. It was a big problem. So whether the situation is intentional or not, there could be penalties for discharges. We partner with the Salt Lake Health Department. They are essentially our enforcement arm for our program. If pollutants enter a storm drain, they do the sampling, testing. We partner with the investigation. They track violators countywide, and they can also issue fines. So why the health department as the arm? And essentially, a discharge to the system could have the potential to cause a public health concern, as well as they track violators from city to city so that they can ensure that these violators, if it's intentional, are caught and fined. Speaking of fines, this is an example of what the health department service provides. This is a notice of violation. Essentially, the neighbors saw an employee of this carpet cleaning company discharging their wastewater tank into the storm drain, and then they took pictures. The next day, they called the city and provided us with the information, which we shared with the health department, and they were able to go to this site, take samples, and this business owner was fined $1,539.50, and that's just the fine. That does not include any cleanup costs, so this can be a very expensive process. So really, why is this so important? Because wildlife depends on water for survival, same with humans. And we want to take our resources for recreation, swimming, boating, fishing. If our rivers and lakes are polluted, we lose access to recreation, and keeping everything clean is the right thing to do. So we do ask for your help. Many employees are out and about in the city daily, and you are really a great resource. We receive calls from public utilities, public works, police and fire with questions, and if you're not sure about something, they'll let us know. And it really has been beneficial in a lot of educational opportunities for businesses and homeowners. Even if your primary position is in the office setting, being aware of negative impacts on water is important for work and for home. If you see something, say something. Like the example of the carpet cleaner, the neighbors took a picture, which led the health department issuing the fine. But if they hadn't done that, we would have never known about it, and those dangerous chemicals would have made it to the river. If you can, take a picture. If there's some sort of documentation that you can provide the health department and us here at Sandy City, we will have something to work with and make sure that we can take care of any potential problems. I'd like to thank you for your time. Again, if you have any questions, I'm always available. Please remember that there will be a required quiz, as well as watch the short power washing video. And again, thank you for your time.